What's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to talk about an Iris energy update or Iren update. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. It just broke back under 70,000. Looks like we had a false breakout out of a pattern that we saw. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about what's happening with the spot Bitcoin ETFs. We did see outflows on Monday, net outflows, and we might look at a couple other things, but let's get started, guys. And first, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin had a promising break out of this pattern. We talked about an article covering this yesterday, but we've been watching this for a while. It looks like we saw a false breakout. We didn't get a candle to close above the pattern. We fell back in this range. And potentially we head down to our previous support, test 66,000. Any pullbacks, I'll say this one last time, maybe not, but any pullbacks before the halving, even shortly after the halving, are buying opportunities. If you're looking at Bitcoin a decade out, Bitcoin is always a buy. If you're trying to play Bitcoin on the halving cycles, on the 4-year cycle, I think Bitcoin is a buy for the next 3, maybe 6 months. Same with the miners. We will reach a point where it is no longer smart to buy and it is actually smarter to sell. That is, if you're just purely looking at the 4-year cycles and playing Bitcoin and Bitcoin proxies based purely on that. Soon the time to sell will come, but it's not yet. In my opinion, it is still the time to buy. Bitcoin is still very bullish. It's riding over its 50 MA. We saw our golden cross back in October of 2023, and I doubt we're going to see a death cross until we get into 2025. Bitcoin will continue its bullish momentum. And speaking of the moving averages, if we do pull back, look for how we test the 50 MA. If we do come down to test this support line, we'll likely be testing the 50 MA as well. That could give us extra strength for a bounce here, and then we can go on to create new all-time highs, seeing prices that we haven't seen for Bitcoin. Why are we seeing a little fear today? Well, in the last video, I told you guys look out for what the ETF inflows/outflows are going to be. It might set the tone for the week. And Monday, we did see net outflows. Grayscale had over 300 million in net outflows. We're continuing, although it's small, we're continuing to see inflows from IBIT, from Fidelity's ETF. So they haven't broken their inflow streak, but you'll see Grayscale selling is back to where it was in the beginning of April. It started kind of diminishing and then it started growing again. And I have an article for you going over how Grayscale's fund is on pace to run dry in about 3 months. If Gbtc's trend of outflows continues, the fund may no longer have any Bitcoin holdings as soon as July 8th. What I think is we aren't going to see Grayscale diminish all of its funds. I do think they're going to change their fees at some point. They've even mentioned once they see about 12 billion in outflows, they will change the fees. Newsflash. They've seen much more than 12 billion in outflows now. They've nearly diminished the fund by half. Grayscale at the beginning of the year had 618,000 Bitcoin. They now hold somewhere around 365,000 Bitcoin. And 21.9 million, this number has come down a bit because of yesterday. Now, like I said, I don't expect Gbtc funds to completely diminish. There will be a point where they either change their fees or the outflows simply dry up a bit, and we are left with just the holders and over time eventually net inflow again. The big catalyst though that I see, better than waiting until summer for Grayscale to potentially diminish all their funds, which I doubt is going to happen. There will be a point where all the sellers exit, the fees either change, and what they're left with is people that are just going to hold the fund. But here's something that's going to happen very, very soon. And said by Eric Balchunas, it's inevitable that IBIT will overtake Gbtc. If things keep up the way they are, it could happen sometime this month. What do you guys think? Do you think we're going to see BlackRock's fund overtake Grayscale? And is it going to come this month? Also, when this happens, do you think the market will see this as a huge positive catalyst? Seeing Grayscale continue to have less and less of an effect on the market as their funds diminish, and seeing IBIT soon overtake them. I do think that's an upcoming catalyst that's going to be big for Bitcoin. And another thing that's big, obviously, is the upcoming halving, only about a week away from now. But next up, let's look at Iren stock and a recent update regarding their AI. And we have news from one of their partners, a leader in AI, that Poolside upsizes and extends their AI cloud service contract with Iren. Now, they previously announced a 3-month AI-based contract with the leading AI company Poolside. This agreement is now upsized from 248 NVIDIA H100 GPUs now to 504. They also have an additional 4-month term commencing mid-April of 2024, so middle of this month, and an extension option for a further 2 months at the customer's election. As said by the co-founder of Poolside, we've been very impressed with the outperformance of Iren's NVIDIA H100 GPU cluster, as it sits among the best in class in reliability and performance, as well as the Iren team's commitment to customer support. Our business has growing demand for GPU compute, and we're pleased to expand our partnership with Iren to support our growth. Now, as a side note, guys, if you want me to cover Hive, this is another Bitcoin miner that is getting into AI. I do think this is sort of a natural step for these companies. They're computer based. They have access to an extreme amount of power. These companies have software knowledge. I do think it's a natural step for some of these Bitcoin miners to get into AI. And this could help them with some staying power as we get through this cycle and as we potentially approach crypto winter in the coming year and a half or so. But looking at Iren, we're still trading in this range. We're creating higher highs, but we're creating lower lows. We are tightening. At some point, Iren will take a new longer term direction, but right now it's basically in limbo mode. The bears and bulls have been fighting for control, but we've been basically stuck in this range and it has been tightening. You'll see these huge swings have been getting smaller as we get closer to the end of this pattern. I think a great buy for Iren, well, I think it's a good buy now, but I think a great buy would be if we come up to the halving and we're sitting in the mid fours. This could be a bouncing point on this pattern. And I do think the halving is seen as a negative catalyst. Obviously, many of these miners are 50% down from their highs. And once we get past the halving, I do think the miners will rally. What we have to look forward after we get past this negative catalyst is Bitcoin's price to continue rallying up. The market will realize very soon that these Bitcoin miners are going to be deeply profitable. As I said in my last video, we haven't even seen any miners report the January, February, March quarter, where Bitcoin rallied from 40,000 to 75,000 roughly. And speaking of that quarter, Iren is expecting a profitable quarter there. They're expecting a huge growth in revenue to 51.5 million. Their last earnings, they reported 42 million. They also reported a loss. The earnings for the first quarter of this year is going to be a pretty important earnings for these miners. We're gonna see, can they actually post a profit? Can any of these miners post a profit before the halving takes effect? We had some that already did. I do think Iren has the potential to post a profit here. We have seen Bitcoin dramatically rise in price throughout that quarter, and to me it stands to reason that at this point they should expect profitability. They gave forward guidance on this quarter back when Bitcoin was in the probably 40-50,000s, so I would assume they should see profitability here. And this earnings comes out early May. A lot of the miners are going to be reporting that first quarter earnings in early May. Now, one thing to look out for Iren, if there's maybe some dilution news or some just negative catalyst, is if we do flip these moving averages. So far, we're still riding our golden cross that we set back in the end of last year. But one thing to think about is if we do keep dropping, if we fail this 200 MA, it's holding it right now. But if we fail this 200 MA, potentially break this pattern, we could potentially see these moving averages flip, which could cause some more pain on the short term until we start recovering. But I do think Iren's looking pretty great here. It's 400% up from its bear market lows, and it's right around 50% down from its peak. I swear, guys, if these miners are literally 50% down when we get to the halving, that is the simplest way of the market pricing in the miners taking half the rewards. They literally cut the stock prices in half from their peaks. If this is all the market needed, a lot of these Bitcoin miners are down 50% from their peaks. And just go on WEBULL, just go on any of the stock socials, and you'll see just how negative the sentiment is. It doesn't matter if it's Iren, it doesn't matter if it's CleanSpark, it doesn't matter if it's a stock that's up 400% from its lows. Retail is extremely negative right now. And people need to flip their emotions when you see these stocks just tanking. If it's a stock you heavily believe in, if it's a stock you have conviction in, you should be welcoming those drops. You should be excited, you should be happy. If it's absolutely rallying, you should be a little disappointed unless you're fully built out, obviously. But when you see some of these comments on WEBULL and stuff, it just shows either they're people that are just so new to investing and they're getting burnt and they're gonna leave and they're gonna quit, or they're just people that kind of need to change their perception. Or it's somebody that's literally all in on one stock and they can't sleep good at night because there's just too much volatility. In that case, don't go all in into a Bitcoin miner. You want a well-diversified portfolio. If you're the type that can't handle a 10% drop, a 30-40% downtrend, then you might want to avoid the Bitcoin miners. We also have some news coming from China. China's largest mainland equity funds quietly joined spot Bitcoin ETF market. And we've talked about previously how Hong Kong is trying to get into spot Bitcoin ETFs. They've been applying for them. Well, the Hong Kong division of China Asset Management, which is one of the largest asset management companies in China, has reportedly also signed a cooperation agreement with Hong Kong's licensed crypto exchange Hashkey to collectively promote and advance initiatives related to Web3 in the asset management industry in Hong Kong. Although a definitive timeline has yet to be announced, industry insiders suggest that relevant applications could materialize as early as this quarter. We're going to continue to see other countries piling in, other countries offering these spot Bitcoin ETFs. We saw how successful they were here in America. There are already other countries that do support spot Bitcoin ETFs, do have them, and they're actively traded. This over time is going to contribute to more buying pressure for Bitcoin. There's a reason we were so excited for spot Bitcoin ETFs in America, even months and months ago when they were just basically a pipe dream. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Hong Kong is going to see these spot Bitcoin ETFs? Are they going to be available this quarter? Also, what do you think about these Bitcoin miners getting into AI? This seems like a somewhat recent trend. It's been going on for a little while, but it seems like a natural choice for some of these Bitcoin miners. And we've seen some that actually have their AI outpacing their Bitcoin mining growth. BitDigital, for example, said that their AI segment is better margins than their Bitcoin mining segment. They've been dramatically growing their revenue. Their revenue is actually outpacing their Bitcoin mining now. We have stocks like Iren that I just showed you getting into AI. We of course have Hive that I briefly mentioned. Let me know if you guys want me to cover that. But I do think it's a pretty natural step for these Bitcoin miners to get into AI. I do think we're going to see more of that in the future. Also, when do you guys think IBIT will finally surpass Gbtc? We're expected to see it this month. That might breathe a huge sigh of relief for the market as we approach the halving. It seems like things are just lining up so perfectly, right? But thanks as always for watching, guys. Let me know what miners you're loading up on as we approach the halving. I do think the clock is ticking. I do think we're running out of time to get some great discounts on these Bitcoin miners. But thanks again, guys, and I will see you next time.